Hi students, in this session we will see about inter-domain routing and intra-domain routing under Unit 4. So the today agenda includes what do you mean by routing, what is a domain, what is an autonomous system, then the actual concept and the concept behind the inter-domain and intra-domain routing, then the differences. We will see one by one. Okay. So first, what do you mean by routing? So already from unit previous topics, you know very well about routing. So the routing algorithms do the routing job based on certain metrics, right? So different routing algorithms use different metrics to choose the best path between the sender and receiver to forward its packets. So routing is a process of selecting a good path or the best path or the optimal path for transferring your data or your packet from a source to the destination system in the computer network. So the routing is constructed based on the metrics by the routing algorithm, you know very well. So the next important concept is the domain. So what do you mean by a domain? So in a computer network scenario, an individual network or a subnetwork or a group of virtual LANs or autonomous system, everything is considered to be a domain. So domain is a set of devices in a network that communicate and share your data between them. So for example, in the topology concepts, a particular area which is having the computer network considered to be a domain, where office network is considered to be a domain. Everything is domain in the computer network scenario. So every individual network is considered to be a domain. Then the another terminology called autonomous system. So in this computer network area, both domain and the autonomous system can be interchangeably used. Both are same only. But the definition for autonomous system will differ. So it is a group of network and routers under the authority of a single administration. That means a small network is managed by a network administrator. Say for example, in our lab scenario, each lab is having a network administrator, or for all the LANs, a common network administrator administer the particular local area network. So that is the autonomous system. So why we use these terms? Certain protocols use this domain as the concept behind the inter and inter-domain routing. Certain protocols use the autonomous system instead of domain for inter and inter-domain routing. That's why we need to know the meaning of domain and autonomous systems for this discussion. Next, what do you mean by intra-domain routing? So you know, a routing process occurred within an autonomous system, or a routing process is taking place inside the domain, particular domain is called intra-domain routing. So in the particular domain or particular autonomous system, we are having switches, routers, right? So the routers, between all the routers in the particular network or particular autonomous system, the packets are exchanged using some routing algorithm, right? That concept is called intra-domain routing. So routing within an autonomous system is considered as the intra-domain routing. So all the routers available inside the autonomous system utilizes this intra-domain routing to share the routing information between the routers. So why this routing information is required? That will be dealt by the routing algorithms involved in that routing table construction process. We have seen different routing algorithms in the previous topics. So such a routing algorithm, say for example, open source, DSDV, then path vector routing, distance vector routing, So there are different kind of routing algorithms are available. So those routing algorithms exchange the information between the routers. So when the informations are shared within the network, shared between the routers within the network, then such type of routing is called intra-domain routing. So the protocols called routing information protocol RIP, then open source shortest path OSPF. These routing protocols are the example protocols of the intra-domain routing category. Okay. Now are you clear about intra-domain routing? So routing process is taking place within an autonomous system or within a domain is called intra-domain routing. Why we need to use intra-domain routing? The routers within the network exchange some information between them by this way of intra-domain routing. That is the main aim of intra-domain routing. Example for intra-domain routing includes routing information protocol RIP, open source shortest path OSPF protocol. These are the inter-domain routing protocols. Now we will see what you mean by inter-domain routing. See here in this network, there are different autonomous systems. So this is one network. Say for example, this is lab 1, this is a lab 2, this is a lab 3. So like that we are having many autonomous systems in an organization or in a network, very big network. Why we use autonomous systems? In order to effectively manage the entire network. So for example, suppose consider that internet is a very big network, so it is a world wide web. So in order to manage the internet, we are dividing the internet into small domains or small autonomous systems for the managing purpose only. So each autonomous system is administered by the single entity or the single administrator. Just now we have discussed it. So the real-time scenario, very big network may have different autonomous systems. So each autonomous system inside are having many routers or forwarding devices inside that autonomous systems. So when the data is forwarded between autonomous systems and within the autonomous systems, the concept of inter-domain routing. So in the inter-domain routing, informations are exchanged between the routers in the autonomous system, in a single autonomous system. Also, information is exchanged between different autonomous systems. That is, routers belonging to different autonomous systems share the information between each other effectively. So this kind of scenario is called inter-domain routing. So a protocol belonging to this category is called border gateway protocol. Okay, border gateway protocol, which shares the aggregated routing information between different domains. So within that particular domain, it can use any kind of intra-domain routing algorithms, but between autonomous systems, it uses inter-domain routing protocol. Okay, the example for inter-domain routing protocol is BGP. So in this flowchart, the routing protocols divided into two categories: intra-domain, inter-domain. So in the distance vector category, we are having RIP. Okay, in the link state category, we are having OSPF. So distance vector, link state are the routing algorithms you know already. So in the inter-domain category, we are having path vector, which is used by the border gateway protocol, BGP in other words. So these are the concepts behind the inter-domain routing, intra-domain routing. Now we will see the difference in a nutshell. So this table shows the difference between intra-domain and inter-domain routing. So the first routing algorithm works only within the domain. Then the routing algorithm works within the domain and between other domains. That is the actual meaning of inter-domain. Then the intra-domain routing should know other routers within an autonomous system. Then only it can exchange the route information between each routers in the autonomous system. So it should know the details of other routers within the autonomous system. But in the case of inter-domain routing, not only knows the details of routers within the autonomous system, it also needs to know other routers in other autonomous systems. Okay, so that's the other important difference. So protocols used in the intra-domain routing type are known as interior gateway routing protocol, IGRP. This is another significant difference. So interior gateway routing protocols, those protocols belonging to the intra-domain routing, that is, those protocols are only used within the autonomous system. Whereas the protocols used in the inter-domain routing category is termed as exterior gateway routing protocol, EGRP. So that is another important difference between intra and inter-domain routings. So since it is only bothering about the internal administrative entities of an autonomous system, it doesn't bother about the outside internet of an autonomous system. So the intra-domain routing only takes care of the routers within the autonomous system. But the inter-domain routing is taking place between different autonomous systems. So in this case, it assumes that the internet contains the collection of interconnected autonomous system. So it views the entire network as the global one. But in the intra-domain, it views the network as the local one. So since it is a very small network, we are using intra-domain routing in a small area, so it is less complex and less independent. But inter-domain, since it is a global view and more complex scenario need to be followed to exchange the information between different autonomous systems. Then the example just now we discussed, RIP and OSPF are the example for intra-domain routing. BGP, that is the border gateway protocol, is the example for the inter-domain routing. So to summarize the concept behind this, there are two categories of routing. One is inter-domain, another one is intra-domain. So in the intra-domain routing, we are exchanging information between the routers inside an autonomous system or inside a domain. That is the intra-domain routing. Whereas in the inter-domain routing, the information are exchanged between routers within an autonomous system, also other autonomous systems outside of that particular autonomous system. So it is the exchange of information between different autonomous systems. So the protocols used inside the domain or inside the autonomous system considered to be interior gateway routing protocols, whereas the protocols used between the different autonomous system or the inter-domain category is considered as a exterior gateway routing protocols. So these are the important concepts behind the inter-domain and intra-domain routing. Thank you.